Thank you. Again, my name is Laura Friedman. I'm from ICC, and I'm very pleased to be with you all today. I'm going to go through a presentation that will tell you a little bit about how SolarAPP came to be and what it is. And then hopefully we'll have Michael do a little demo for you at the end so you can actually see what it looks like. In between us, hopefully we can answer any and all of the questions that you have. So with that, let me share my screen. Hang on. One moment. Just want to get this into slideshow, which is not working for me right this moment. Hang on. No. For some reason, it's not offering me slideshow, which is the problem. Okay, well, can everybody see my screen?
Yes, we can see it.
Yes.
Okay, so we'll just have to go with this because I don't want to, oh wait, never mind. I think I got it. Here we go. Okay. I want everybody to be able to see. Not all of them are quite have this big writing, so I want you to be able to see everything. Okay, so welcome to the presentation on SolarAPP. So I'm actually representing ICC in its collaboration with NREL in support of SolarAPP, and as part of that collaboration, the Co-Council has been supporting SolarAPP in two ways. One is providing technical resource to ensure that permitting requirements actually comply with ICODES. So that's an important thing for this group to know. We're also insisting in spreading the word about SolarAPP, which is what I'm doing now with local governments that are members or customers of ICC and all the ICC chapters. So today, here we are spreading the word. So let's begin. So SolarAPP is a collaborative effort made with the input of quite a team of experts. Right here, you just see some logos of just some of the participants in creating something that works and is applicable and meets the needs of AHJs really across the country. And as we note here, it is free for towns and cities to adopt, and it has a small $25 fee that's paid by the installer. But we'll talk more about that. Data actually shows that economic growth compounds once permitting moves to an all online system, and grows even more so once the process incorporates instant permit approval. So as an example, the city of San Jose, who was an early adopter of SolarAPP, when they started to automate PV approvals, they experienced a 6-fold increase in growth, which is pretty big. The resulting growth from automated permitting creates an infusion of local resources and generates a greater amount of government revenue for less effort. So there's really a plus. The more permits that get processed and the more quickly they get done and the fees are collected, obviously greater revenue for the local government. Wanted to highlight that local governments and rooftop solar are allies in pursuing a set of shared values. Each stands to mutually benefit in furthering public safety and environmental outcomes. Quality is also important, as SolarAPP aims to improve the quality of installations and the inspection records. Regarding economic development, in difficult economic times, solar has remained popular. Whether the economy is up or down, solar is still growing. Solar itself can bring in revenue when other industries can't. Rooftop solar has been growing for 10 years straight, and that trajectory is not expected to change anytime in the foreseeable future. Certainly in California, you're seeing the result of legislation that's all kinds of legislation, including the most recent that affects SolarAPP, but lots of legislation that's aimed at increasing the adoption of solar. That's beginning to happen in other states as well, recently in Colorado, and things happening in other places. So it's definitely on the upswing. But with that upswing, with that rapid growth comes an increase in the volume of solar permit applications, and that constrains city resources. So the capacity for our local government to respond to permitting volume will significantly impact that potential for economic growth in any given jurisdiction. And here's an opportunity for SolarAPP and local governments to work together in supporting what's good for towns and cities, which is certainly increased revenue and their desire to go solar. As SolarAPP reviews rooftop solar installs at a faster pace than traditional processes, your permitting team won't face additional burden from the growth in solar permits. The platform helps jurisdictions adapt to new technologies and updated code years, and you can continue to collect the same fees to support the growing volume of non-standardized systems. I'm changing slides with a compromised hand, so excuse me for that. From the homeowner's perspective, permitting begins shortly after the sale. Site review and design phases are where they get a lot of attention, and the industry invests thousands of dollars on each customer, getting them to the stage where they actually are ready to go. And it's mostly extensive and expensive engineering work. But once your constituent's design is complete and the permit and internet applications are in, interconnection applications are in, they're left to wait. They may get distracted, move on to something else. And even once we do have approval to install, the homeowner needs to find time in their calendar to take the next step. It's all very uncertain. And unfortunately, up to 10% of potential solar adopters drop out of the process for every week of delay to install. So it's a compelling reason to move quickly on installations. Given the conversations that the whole SolarAPP team has had with dozens of jurisdictions, cookie cutter systems are easy to approve and often take no more than an hour to review. But because of the sheer volume of applications, they often sit in a queue before they actually get a chance to be reviewed. I think I heard one statistic, something like 80% of the SolarAPP applications for residential rooftop solar are pretty much cookie cutter. And that's exactly what SolarAPP is aimed at. SolarAPP is able to process automated plan reviews and code compliance checks for those cookie cutter systems, allowing them to move to install without any delay, without sitting for, what might be a day, what might be 5 days, what might be a couple of weeks, depending on what's happening in your jurisdiction. But again, SolarAPP is strict about what can be considered standardized. If a project does not meet SolarAPP eligibility, it will get kicked out and must go through the traditional actual human being review process. So if it's cookie cutter and everything checks, great, they can go through that automated permitting process. But if anything is non-standard, if it's anything but a kind of truly standard cookie cutter project, it gets spit out and goes through your normal review. Regardless, you'll get the same permitting fees and will likely see total collections go up as faster approvals keep more homeowners on track. Okay, so what actually does SolarAPP do? I'm hoping you can all still see my screen. I'm going to just move this over.
Yeah, we can still see it.
Okay, great. Think of SolarAPP as your digital assistant. You are doing visual checks and doing yes or no questions yourself. The system is creating verbal checks that you would typically do visually. Because it's a verbal check, it can very quickly catch code issues like typos, errors, and because it's responsive, it's able to return corrections and provide guidance for getting that answer correct. So someone makes a small error in code, or something's not quite complying to code standards, it'll catch it right away. Lots of people report that they go back and forth on review of plans because of a typo or because someone just accidentally answered the wrong thing. That takes up time And this system really kind of gets around that because it catches it, and right in the moment they're able to fix it. It also provides guidance for getting the correct answer. Think of it kind of like type ahead. It helps you get the right answer. It keeps you in the right direction if you're about to make a mistake. And some places experience the fact that there aren't enough QA resources for the less experienced contractors out there. So in this sense, the team agrees with you that it's above and beyond the scope of your job and really not the best use of your time. In fact, one of the motivations behind creating SolarAPP was to remove the burden of that extra checking from the plan check staff. So once you adopt SolarAPP, the system will handle all the applications for you, guide the contractors through approval, so that only the applications that you'll have to do rigorous review on are truly sticky and difficult projects. For example, a big commercial project or something like that, or a project with a main panel upgrade. Here we have so what systems are eligible for SolarAPP. So it's residential PV. It's actually residential PV plus storage at this point. Approved equipment, NEC 27 and 2020 codes, 2018 and 2021 I codes. You can see all of the things here. No wood shake roofs, no metal roofs, things that we're working on. Residential storage is considered still in pilot, but it's available. And add-ons for existing systems, and main panel upgrades are coming in the future, but this is what's available now. These are just some quotes from some of the places that have been using SolarAPP. Tucson and Pima County, lots of places. There are actually 62 towns and cities using SolarAPP at this point. And something like 21,000, last time I checked, 21,000 permits have been issued. Here are some details for you. So SolarAPP has reduced the permitting time to less than 1 day. It's been shown from all the people using it, there's no time added to inspections of systems in the field. In fact, in some cases, it's improved inspections because one of the outputs of SolarAPP is a standardized detailed inspection checklist that's all kind of organized, nice and neat, kind of ready to use. More than 1,200 permits have been approved for the solar plus storage pilot. And among the communities that have been using it, again, we see no problem with inspections, and in fact, they're typically inspected 12 days faster than projects using a traditional process. All of this done using SolarAPP's instantaneous review, reducing those average permit times from application to permit. So now we've talked about, some of the benefits, but, how does it work? What does it actually do? What is the actual experience? So the installer inputs project information and probably spends about 15 minutes moving through fire, structural, electrical, and workers' comp type of questions. There are about 50 questions in total. Across the forms, the system is automating compliance checks so that you or your staff don't have to do them visually. Second, SolarAPP runs compliance checks. If the installer inputs anything that's non-compliant, the system will give them feedback, guiding them towards a compliant answer. So if they're making an innocent mistake or just a mistake, it puts them in the right direction. Because it's automated, it very quickly catches code issues, typos. It's designed to be responsive, so it instantly returns those corrections, providing guidance for getting that correct answer. Because of this, SolarAPP can help limit the amount kind of questions that jurisdictions get on basic applications, especially from, relatively inexperienced or new installers, and allows the permit technicians to focus their efforts on more complicated permitting situations. So yes, it saves them time, and it may it takes some of the work away from permit technicians, but the reality is that most of those permit technicians have an awful lot on their plate. So this makes their lives a little bit easier. Third, if the contractor completes a compliant application, the SolarAPP administrative fee and your permitting fee get paid. Once that's complete, the permit is instantly issued with the inspection checklist and other content for your inspection team to verify in the final inspection. All this is no-touch process and allows for easy permitting. There are two versions, if you like, or two ways that SolarAPP can be used. The first option currently is for a city currently using an online permitting system. So whether that's eTrackIt, or I'm now forgetting the names, but most of the standard online permitting systems that places are using can be worked with very easily with SolarAPP. I won't say that it's an integration because that's too complicated. It's more like a setup. So the standalone model, the integration model, if you have something, is for jurisdictions already using some type of online permitting system, such as Excella, looking at my list now, Excella or Tyler Energov or eTrackIt. And the way it works is the installer pre-approves the project with the fee. Then those approval docs get uploaded into the jurisdiction's software system. And that, like I said, it's actually a setup. So think of it as akin to another permit type being created in your online permitting software. So as long as it accepts that identifier that allows for SolarAPP to pass over that identifier and the PDF documents, that's all that's required. And then the fee gets paid just the way it does in your existing online permitting system. But for places not using an online permitting system, the standalone model begins with the installer inputting their project and paying the $25 administrative fee. Then the contractor then pays your city or county's fee in SolarAPP using Stripe. The project approval documents are stored in SolarAPP for easy future access. And finally, the permit gets issued instantly. All permit and inspection documents are sent to both the installer and the jurisdiction. And yeah, okay. Then, so here's a sort of summary of the pieces of the pie here. So if you're looking to adopt SolarAPP, the first thing is to select the correct integration. Are you standalone or are you integrating or setting up with your existing software? Next, once you decide that, you register actually on the SolarAPP site, and then you begin to input your local settings. So who are the permitting contacts? What are the boundaries of your town or city? What are the local wind and snow variables? What model code years are you on? What are your particular terms and conditions? Then you set up the instant permit workflow depending on your integration. And lastly, get ready to launch. And this usually involves a soft launch. So you might invite 1 to 3 installers to use SolarAPP to get started. And we can help you with that. The team can help you identify people if they aren't at the ready for you. And then you open up SolarAPP permitting to all the installers. That's sort of an introduction to what it's all about. I'm going to stop sharing now so we can see if there are questions and whatnot before Michael gives you a view of what it actually looks like. So I'll stop for a moment. I've been talking a lot, and let's see if there are any questions that we can answer for you. Any questions? Okay.
I don't see anything in the chat.
Okay. Well, either I'm doing a good job at explaining or everybody's asleep. I hope maybe a little of both. So Michael, can I suggest that you queue up and give everybody a little bit of a peek of what SolarApp's all about?
Absolutely. Once again, thank you everybody for having us here today. We really appreciate it. What I'm going to do is show you the online portal that the applicants will see and kind of walk you through that so that you have an idea what's going on in the background. How did we get there? Is everybody seeing my inspection checklist?
Yes.
Very good. So this is the document, and as you can see, it's 22 pages. Some of these get into 30 pages very quickly. And this is the final document that's actually issued, if you will. This is what's uploaded to your jurisdiction's permitting software, or this can be printed. This document is also available immediately. There is a QR code at the bottom of the page. Now it's grayed out here, a little hard to tell because this is a demo project, but every one of these has a QR code on it, these final sets of paperwork. So at any point in time, you can log into the SolarAPP site and you can pull up the latest version of the approved project documents. You can also go into the field and scan the QR code and bring up, let's say the contractor has the QR code, he printed a few pages for you, but he's done an update since the time he's printed that document. If you'll scan that QR code, it will immediately bring up onto your tablet or other device the most current version of the permit. SolarAPP does not work without an inspection checklist. This is the heart of it for the jurisdiction. The contractor is responsible, as Laura mentioned, to answer about 50 questions. What's generated then is this checklist. What's going on with the electrical equipment? What are the different bus bars? What are their ratings? How are we connecting the solar system in? What are the ratings there? What inverter are we using? What is the type of architecture? Is it an AC module? Is it a DC module? Are we using microinverters? Are we using standalone inverters? All of these things are important. Also, the roof and the PV array. What are we using to mount the system to the roof? What's the racking system? Is the roof in good shape? What are the spacings that the racking system is designed for? And what has the contractor told us that they'll be using? Typically, they're allowed up to 72 inches of spacing, again, depending on the rack system. All of these inputs are here. So as your staff goes into the field and is actually looking at the project and standing there, you have this list, which is job specific. This is not a generic list. This is based directly on the inputs for that address and that solar installation. Again, we'll go through all of this. Once you end the inspection checklist, which is typically 3 pages, you'll then see the fire bulletin. This is provided as a courtesy. It's also part of the process that the contractor goes through. And the contractor will have a small learning curve here. The first time they go through and answer questions off the fire bulletin, it's going to take them a little while. It's very easy to figure out and it becomes intuitive very quickly. So once they're in the process and they're pulling their second, third, fourth permit, this part will go very easily for them. It's typically the first one that runs a little bit of extra time. But this fire bulletin gives you everything that you need to be looking for. Roof access, egress, ventilation. The ridge setbacks are very important. The fire protection system. What is the fire classification of the roof and of the system? Product certifications. Do I have a listed rack? Do I have a listed module? Is the rack listed with the module for grounding and bonding? All of these questions are looked at by the software. The next thing we take a look at, and again, provided as a courtesy, is what is the signage that we should be looking for? So these signs are actually printed on these sheets so that you can see them and you can give a direct code reference for each one of them. So you're actually able to go ahead and look it up in the code if you don't happen to know why that sign is required or what information is required on it. And again, if you look at the bottom left corner here, you'll have that QR code that every project gets, again, individual to that project. The fire safety code requirements now, we're going to take a look at these ridge setbacks and emergency escape routes, things of that nature. what you need to remember on these is 33% and 66%. If we are covering less than 33% of the roof area or 66% of it's a sprinklered home, you're allowed an 18-inch ridge setback. Any other system would need a 36-inch ridge setback. And it also talks about the hips and the valleys and the driveway access and things of that nature. Again, just remember that 33 and 66%, and you shouldn't have a problem. We did have some inspectors who were very surprised to see less than 3 feet at the ridge, not realizing that the code did permit that as long as we didn't have too much coverage of the solar panels on the roof. The next part of this, and it's the rest of the document for the most part, is all of the inputs. So this is what the contractor has told us. What is the address of the project? Where is it? Who's the installer? What size is the system in both AC and DC? And it just runs through all of the various information you need. The snow loading is here. Another thing you need to recognize about the SolarAPP is we're taking a very conservative approach when it comes to your roof loading. Your roof is typically set up for at least 20 pounds of live load. We're changing that out to 4 pounds, not 40, 4 pounds of dead load. And you can't walk on those solar panels, so it is a dead load. We've never had a problem with a roof that couldn't hold it up because we're so much lower than the live load design for the roof. We ask about the wind speed, the roof condition, what kind of equipment are we using, and the contractor, besides this form, which is what we call the long form, they are also uploading the cut sheets for certain pieces of the equipment. So you will have a cut sheet for the inverter, you'll have a cut sheet for the module, you'll have a cut sheet for the rack system. And all of these things are provided in a second document that's attached, again, same QR code to this job-specific set of paperwork. We go through and we see the racking system, what are the site conditions, what's the roof pitch, what's the fire rating, et cetera, et cetera. And then the installation details, and we start asking yes/no questions. And we start asking for inputs for the calculated amount of current. What is the ampacity of overcurrent devices? What is the ampacity of the conductors? Are you putting more than 3 conductors in a raceway? Have you properly derated that installation? All of these things are asked. The next thing we go into is bus bars, and I'll talk a little bit about this when I show you the demo, but the bus bars were limited to a 400 amp service, and no bus bar in the system could be more than 225 amps in rating. Any system that doesn't fall within that set of parameters has to go over the counter or through your normal regular permitting process. Again, we're looking to fast track cookie cutter small installations that typically have the same ratings within a certain range. As Laura mentioned, you're not going to be able to do a large warehouse building or a big box store, or there's no ground mount systems that are permitted here. Even if you had a detached structure, that detached structure would already have to have an electrical panel for you to tie into, as no trenching is permitted under a SolarAPP permit. So if you have a detached, yes.
I'm just going to hop in here because we have a bunch of very good questions. So
oh, please, yes, stop me.
why don't we pause for a minute and answer some of the questions, and some of them I know the answer to, but I know you can give better answers. So there's questions about how SolarAPP validates that a contractor actually has a license. So if you could talk about that for a moment.
Yes, there is a license portion of the setup process. So as we're onboarding you and getting you set up, whatever your local requirements are for licensing, we do create that database, and it is checked before the contractor is eligible. So if at any point you have a contractor who has a series of violations and are not correcting them, and you say, look, I don't want this guy pulling any more permits, you just let us know it's SolarAPP and we'll take him out of the system. He will have his privileges revoked. And that's important to understand. The use of SolarAPP is a privilege. It is not something that anybody's entitled to. If you game the system, if you cheat the system, if you abuse the system, or you don't follow all the rules, with one phone call, we can remove that privilege from you, and you will no longer be able to get instant permits. I can tell you from our
contractors do need to essentially apply to be a SolarAPP contractor. They do have to go through
yes.
the process. Yeah, I think that's also part of the question. So if a contractor does have a license issue when they apply and their license is not valid, or there's an issue, they won't be allowed to be a SolarAPP contractor, so to speak.
Correct.
And the next question is, does SolarAPP generate fees based on the fee schedule set by California? Can fees be customized to incorporate specific jurisdiction fees, such as an admin fee?
Yes, so SolarAPP, at the SolarAPP end of this process, the only fee that we charge is the $25 convenience fee, if you will. And that's a fee that allows us to keep the software up to date and do the auditing and things to that nature. That's the only thing that SolarAPP collects. All the other fees are paid to you. They're either paid directly through your software if you already have permitting software that allows fees to be paid. Otherwise, we set you up with a Stripe account, and whatever your fee structure is, it remains the same, and you continue to collect those fees. Again, if you do it with SolarAPP through Stripe, the contractor's paying Stripe because that's who the federal government is contracted with. Stripe then sends the money to the municipality.
So then there's a question about revisions. So certainly SolarAPP does handle revisions. There are some dependencies there, whether or not people pay another fee. So could you talk about the revision process? Let's say a contractor decides to have a bigger or smaller system after the permit is issued, or if the contractor needs to change equipment, perhaps due to back orders.
Absolutely. SolarAPP allows 3 revisions with no charge on the SolarAPP end of things. If your jurisdiction charges a fee for each revision, that would be set up in the onboarding, and the contractor would be able to update and revise their permit on the SolarAPP end, but they wouldn't be able to get to their new paperwork until they paid the jurisdiction's revision fee, if there is any. If there isn't one, then it just goes through and it's not a problem. And as I said, that QR code that's on the documentation can always be pulled up in the field to grab the latest version of that permitting paperwork that has been issued.
And the next question is, what documents are generated by SolarAPP when changes occur to the project, like more PV panels, less PV panels, added ESS batteries?
So changes like more or less PV panels or a change in manufacturer can be handled through the standard revision process. Again, SolarAPP allows 3 revisions without charging a fee. You cannot all of a sudden decide to add ESS to the project. That's a different application form. You would have to scrap that permit and start over, because there are a whole series of questions that we need to ask in order to approve an ESS permit that's tied to a solar system. SolarAPP does not currently accommodate standalone ESS, so this would only be ESS that's tied in with a solar system. So, like I said, changing a parameter like 1 or 2 panels or a different manufacturer of the inverter, we can accommodate that kind of a revision. You cannot double the size of the system, and you cannot suddenly decide to add ESS. That's going to require a completely new permit to be issued.
Okay. And one person asks, their jurisdiction required all contractors to have a valid city business license. How would that be tracked?
Again, you guys would tell us who your contractors are that are allowed to be in your system and using SolarAPP within your jurisdiction. So I'm not familiar with exactly how the onboarding goes there and what they do from the IT end of things, but I know that we have many jurisdictions that require a local electrical license or a local business license, and they're already working with SolarAPP. So it is tracked and is taken care of, much in the same way that we can confirm addresses are within your jurisdiction. You don't want somebody trying to pull a permit that's out there on the edge, and perhaps that particular address, because of the strange border, is actually in the adjoining or suburban township. We don't want that permit to be issued through your jurisdiction. So we do track all of these things.
Okay, and the last question, I know this is in your very special wheelhouse, Michael. How does SolarAPP handle jurisdiction-specific amendments to the code? Is there any customization? I will start by saying that SolarAPP does accommodate the amendments to code that are specific to California in general, but I know there's a fuller explanation that you can give, Michael.
There is, and what I can say to you is, to some extent, customization is available. Yes, it's really not a problem if you have some piece of code that's tweaked slightly. We can arrange that in the onboarding process. If you've adopted a book that is 50% different from the existing codes, we may not be the product for you.
Okay, those are all the questions to date. So maybe now we could move to a quick demo. I think we still have time. and let them have a look.
Absolutely. So thank you so much for all those great questions. By the way, keep them coming in. Laura will absolutely stop me, and I'll try and answer as many of these questions as I can. Laura's also doing a great job answering questions for us. Between the two of us, I think we'll get you where you need to be. If by any chance there's a question that we don't know the answer to, we will absolutely write it down, research it, and get back to you. We're going to send any responses that need to go to the leadership of the chapter. So how did we get to that form that I was showing you? And basically, you're going to go to the SolarAPP website. Now, as a warning, I am on a demo site, so what your contractors see may be a little bit different. And they're going to go ahead and click in on new project. And you're going to give a name to the project, and then you're going to go ahead and put an address in there. Oh, that's the wrong copy and paste I wanted. 1936. Now, well, let's just say Savannah Drive in Pottstown, Pennsylvania. Right now, the software is validating that address and saying, nope, SolarAPP isn't in there, or I'm not a registered contractor in that municipality, or anything of that nature. So that's it. End of process. If the address falls outside of the parameters of your setup, it's not going to work. Once we have a legitimate project, we start going through the review process. And the SolarAPP eligibility checklist is the first thing that everybody will see. And I have a larger version of that here. And what this does is it tells you the parameters of a project that qualifies to have a SolarAPP permit. I'm not going to go through this entire list because it'll take way too much time. But as I said earlier, up to a 400 amp electrical service, everybody has their own individual electrical meter. As we scroll down, you'll see that there's no trenching allowed. All of the connections for the inverter outputs have to happen in one place. So you can't have some solar on the barn with a backfeed into a panel on the barn, and then another one on the house going back into, or a line side connection at the house. Something like that goes over the counter through your normal process. We only work with the flat PV modules. The limit is going to be 1 and 2 family dwellings or townhomes, not more than 3 stories. We can do accessory structures, again, for 1 and 2 family dwellings. The International Residential Code, and in your case, the California specific codes, are already incorporated into the software. Again, our maximum weight is 4 pounds per square foot dead load. So way below the 20 pounds per square foot of live load that most roofs have as a minimum setup. You're not allowed to put solar on a carport or a non-permanent structure. You're not allowed to have it on a ground-mounted system. And again, the IRC and the fire for its fire portion is going to be in effect.
Michael, I'm just going to jump in with a question. I'm pretty sure I know the answer, but I'm going to give it to you.
Well, if you know the answer, answer it, because I don't know the answer on this one. I don't know what that tool is that's in the software.
Oh, it's Google. Google provides, Google has quite the mapping of the United States. So SolarAPP gets their information from Google.
Very good.
Not like random Google, like the Google mapping of the world, think of
right.
Google.
It's a software product, not a search engine.
Right. So the next question is, so the contractor can't use SolarAPP if it's a line side connection. And yes, you can have the presentation.
Yes, the contractor can use SolarAPP for a line side connection. The contractor cannot do a line side connection at the house and backfeed a panel at the barn, because then our inverters will be connected to 2 different places, and SolarAPP does not permit that type of job. It's not that they can't do the job. They just have to go through the normal over-the-counter process with a human being doing the plan review instead of it being automatically generated through SolarAPP. But yeah, line side connections are absolutely allowed. So as you can see here, once we go through the eligibility checklist, we have to check 3 boxes here. We have to enter our license information, city licenses, state licenses, and we're going to hit the next button. And SolarAPP has told me that I have made a mistake. I did not check the box that says the system will be installed on a permitted structure, which is to say it was a legally built structure at some point. So I've checked that box, and now, I've been idle for too long. Yuck. I hate when this happens. My apologies. Let me pull this project open again. Sometimes this demo server times us out. Okay, there we go. So if at any point you have a question, there is this question mark in the bottom corner. There are some instant answers available to you, or you can type a question and that gets sent to the SolarAPP team. Somebody typically responds within a day. So the contractor, a lot of the questions we get from the jurisdictions is my phone going to ring off the hook with people asking me questions about this? I'd like to tell you no. The simple truth of the matter is we know darn well that once they start this, if they get stuck, the easiest thing for them to do, because they probably know you, is to pick up the phone and give you a call. We do try all along the way to make sure that we limit that. And again, once they're comfortable with the software and they're using it on their second, third, fourth time, you won't have too many problems.
Michael, I'm going to jump in with another question. This is definitely one for you. Someone suggests that their city requires Class A fire rated roof assemblies. How does SolarAPP verify that the panels have the same fire classification per R324.4.2? What panel rating is equivalent to Class A?
So I don't know what panel rating is equivalent to Class A. I know that SolarAPP does not confirm that. In other words, we don't have a way to keep a database of all the solar panels that are on the market. There is an attestation that is made by the contractor. So it's a question that is asked, does your module match up with your roof rating? And again, that question can be tweaked to say, is this a Class A fire rated module because that's specific to your jurisdiction? And again, the contractor would answer yes, no. Now, as I said, SolarAPP is a privilege. The contractors are, I can tell you from our experience, are chomping at the bit to pay the $25 fee to get their permits on the same day. It allows them to sell solar systems and get the installation started right away. They're passing along the cost, so this is not creating any kind of a hardship for anybody. But again, it's a privilege. So if a contractor says, yes, I'm using Class A modules, and you get to the site and they're not, you write the violation and you walk away. If they do that 2 or 3 times to you, you call us and you say that contractor is no longer eligible for SolarAPP, and we take them out of the system. And now they have to go through the over-the-counter long process to get all their solar permits. So
there's another question.
Yes.
Many solar systems will require service panel upgrades. How will that additional permit and fee component be handled?
It will not. SolarAPP doesn't do electrical service upgrades. We're for the solar system. So if you require a service panel upgrade, again, this would be your choice on onboarding. You can allow the solar permit to go through with a caveat that says if you're upgrading the service, you need to come in and see us for your separate permit to upgrade the electrical service. So again, this is all worked out in the onboarding process. And I want to make sure everybody knows about the pilot that Laura mentioned. We actually have a pilot portion where typically there are 3 or 4 contractors that we work with that are doing these projects all over the country, and they know how to use SolarAPP. They go in and they pull the first 5 permits with you. And at that point, you get to see, is the software doing what you want it to do? Are all the fees being transferred as they're supposed to be transferred? Are your inspectors able to make use of the inspection checklist? Are they encountering any problems in the field with the inspections? Usually after 5 inspections, everything's good, and we go to live. So we open up the process to everybody. If it doesn't happen after 5 inspections, you can say to us, all right, listen, we're still not comfortable with this. Can we run another 5? Absolutely. 10 is the most we've ever had. Typically somewhere between 5 and 10 jobs in, the jurisdiction says, okay, we're good. We agree this product works and it's a great thing. And we're happy with all the outputs, and our inspectors like it and everything else. So hopefully that's the way it'll go for everybody. I will continue now and tell you about the fire terms within the application. Again, this is your applicant is going online and answering these questions. If you don't check the box, you don't get to move forward. So you want to make sure that you check the box. What is the roof area? Does the home have sprinklers? Just 2 questions here that we have to worry about. And what happens is they're looking at the fire bulletin, which again, I showed you earlier was in the generated documentation, but this is what that looks like. This is the whole fire bulletin. You'll have it. It'll be available. It'll be attached to every one of your jobs. It becomes a wonderful reference for your field inspectors, for anybody inside the jurisdiction's building that wants to look at things. All the reminders are here. All of the code references are here. This fire bulletin is a very, very powerful portion of the documentation that is issued. If at any point you're stuck, there's also these little information buttons. So as I hover over it, it provides me with a little paragraph here that lets me know exactly what they're looking for here. And again, if I make a mistake and I say this system weighs 5.3 pounds per square foot, it's going to kick me out of the system, or not kick me out. It's going to say you can't go any further. A system that weighs 5.16 or 5.6 pounds per square foot is not eligible for SolarAPP. Please go to the jurisdiction and draw a permit through the normal over-the-counter method, if you will. So again, what is the roof? What is the maximum distance of the module to the roof? You'll notice that the software uses drop downs wherever possible. And what drop downs do is eliminate typos. If people aren't having fat finger syndrome and accidentally hitting the wrong entry or the wrong key, it makes it a lot easier to process the application. So even on a yes/no question, it's a drop-down box so that you don't make a typo and create a situation where the software kicks out the answer or the jurisdiction says we're not accepting this because it's not typed properly. So we've really tried to make sure that this process is easy and smooth. Are there some places where actual inputs have to go in? Yes. If you're talking about the ampacity of certain modules or inverters or maximum short circuit current ratings, those are going to be numbers that go in and are typed in. But wherever possible, we don't allow them to type. Again, we have this wonderful explanation material that's provided, and that question mark in the bottom right corner is always there. So the next thing we're asking about is the roof framing. And again, you'll see the software is thinking about this right now. This looks like it's very simple and it looks like, okay, what's the big deal? There are some extremely powerful algorithms working in the background right now to make sure that that all of the proper parameters are processed and that they meet the requirements of the code and your jurisdiction. We take a look here and we're looking at now at the inverters. There is a requirement that they upload the inverter data sheet. Okay, what's the maximum fuse rating that's permitted? What is the name of the data sheet? Do you have another inverter? If you answer yes here, another window opens up or another box opens up and says, okay, what's the information on your second inverter? The same thing happens for the modules. Who makes them? What model number? Please upload the data sheet. What is the fire rating type? Is it a bifacial module? We now have bifacial modules on the market. If they are, there's some additional questions that would pop up there as well. Now we move on to the racking system. Who makes the racking system? What model number is it? I see a question pop, couple questions.
Yep, there's two questions. The first one is panels are not rated class ABC like roofs. What is the equivalent panel rating? What agency can answer that question?
So I'm going to have to, unless you know, Laura, I'm going to have to ask you to write that one down and we'll have to do some research on that one. I don't know exactly the answer to that question.
I will. And then the next one is, does the system require a plot plan to show locations of panels?
It does not. SolarAPP, the biggest thing that SolarAPP has done is it has eliminated the need for a plan set. Everything that you would gain in the way of information from a set of drawings, which is the old way of doing plan review, right? The contractor comes in with his drawings and his application, and then we review them. And again, I was a plan reviewer for 23 years on the electrical side. I know exactly how this goes. All of that information that your eyes would have taken off that page because you were given a drawing has been changed over into text-based questions. So the contractor at no point is required to actually upload a drawing of the job. All the information that you need is going to come from this long form once it's printed. I don't know what SARA requirements are. Does anybody know?
I don't know.
Okay. So again, I'll ask you to just write down that question and we'll research it after the fact, please.
Going on my list.
Beautiful. Okay, so the racking system, again, who makes it? What model number is it? Please make sure you tell us about or upload the data sheet for it. You have the option, upload the data sheet for your sealing method if you want to. Rapid shutdown or some other PV hazard control system. What are you using? How are we getting that rapid shutdown requirement taken care of? Now we move on to the installation details. Is there another utility interactive power production source? In other words, do you already have solar or do you have a wind system already on the property? If you do, and you hit yes to that, that's it, end of application. You cannot have a SolarAPP job that has already an existing system on the site. It has to be an existing house and it has to be a first-time solar installation with no other utility interactive production sources.
Michael, we have another question. Can the jurisdiction request a plot plan prior to permit issuance? How do we know if it's installed at a non-permitted structure? Well,
So
that's what inspections are for, but yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Right. I'm going to say to you that you don't need the plot plan. Okay. As far as I know, we don't have a single jurisdiction that has a plot plan upload that's required through this process. The idea of SolarAPP is to eliminate the plot plan. Now, again, there are questions that are asked to make sure that this system is going in legally. If the contractor lies to you, write the violation, walk away. If it happens more than once, take away his SolarAPP privileges. That really is the best way to do this.
And Michael, another question. Actually, this is an interesting question that hasn't come up before. Will it work for owner builders or is the app only available for licensed contractors?
I can't answer that question. I don't know what the parameters are. If your jurisdiction allows an owner to work on their own property, and I know there are many that do here on the East Coast, I have to assume that the software has a way to allow that to happen, but it's not anything I've seen.
A list of questions, yeah, because that
Please
actually
do.
hasn't come up.
It's an interesting question. These are, by the way, thank you all so much for these questions. These are really, really wonderful questions. Solar access roof area. D News, if you will just unmute yourself. And are you talking about the fire setbacks that are required at the ridge and on the side and for any egress windows?
Okay, let's give that a minute and just let we kind of proceed to finishing the demo.
Very good.
If there's more questions.
Okay, so again, we're now on the heavy duty and the electrical portion of this. So are all your rooftops at least 7/8 inch above the roof? Under the 2026 code, I think that number has been reduced to 3/4. But the idea being we don't need to derate because of how close we are to the roof itself. What size grounds are you putting in there? Does everything fall within the allowable range of the connected equipment? Again, if we say no, we have to go over the counter. It's just that simple. The software requires us to have the proper answers to be a SolarAPP approved project. And again, please don't let the contractors abuse the system. We can very easily take them out of the system and just not allow them to do their permits this way. Believe me, that's a big hammer. This is a wonderful, wonderful benefit for the contractor. And we have found that they are not interested in gaming this system and cheating and trying to get one over on you. What they want is to get their permit right away, get their job sold, get the installation done, get all their inspections. You got to remember there are inspections through this whole process. Very typically, there are 2 inspections that happen. And what we'll tell you is a lot of jurisdictions don't allow an inspector to go up on a roof to look at the installation. Well, that's fine. Plan on being there the day that they're doing the install so that you can see the modules on the ground, so that you can actually read the nameplates and the labeling on them and ask any questions that you have as the inspector. Then you can go back for the final. And again, you can require a final building, a final electrical, final fire, whatever it is that's required within your jurisdiction.
Michael, let me jump in here. So a couple of very good questions here. with the recent bills that will mandate offering automated online permitting for solar, will we still show compliance with the bill if we deny a specific installer from using the platform if they abuse it, like you said? That's a very interesting question that is probably specific to, I'm just going to jump in here and say probably specific to the state that is creating that mandate, creating that legislation. My guess is there would be some sort of carve out for places where someone's abused it, just like any contractor who would be doing things that would be in violation. But Michael, do you have an opinion on that?
I do. So in my experience, and I've been doing this for some time with SolarAPP, I'm also on the SolarAPP audit team. Your jurisdiction to comply has to offer the ability for fast track permitting. It is my understanding that there is nothing in the legislation that says that that fast track permitting has to be made available to every human being with a heartbeat on the planet. You're allowed to decide who gets to use that system based on, do they have a license in your jurisdiction, right? If they don't have a license, they can't use the system. If they don't have a business license, they can't use the system. Similarly, if they're cheating the system or trying to get one over on you, they can't use the system. It doesn't mean that you're not in compliance with the law. You still have a fast track permitting system, and there are lots of contractors that are using it. You've just taken certain individuals and excluded them for whatever reason it is.
Right. So let me jump in with another question here. So somebody else asked, how can we know where the panels are installed if we don't know the location other than it's on the roof? What if the layout changed once the inspector is out in the field?
Well, again, the layout is not really critical. What's critical is the setbacks and the total coverage percentage-wise of the roof. If the panels are shifted 2 feet this way and 2 feet that way, or 2 feet up or 2 feet down, and you still have a 3-foot walkway and you still have a ridge setback, it really doesn't matter. And believe me, I feel your pain. I understand as a plan reviewer, I understand saying, well, but there's no drawing. I want a drawing. I need a drawing. It's the way I've always done it. We're changing the way we've always done it. But again, what do you need to verify? You're going to go out in the field and you're going to say, okay, there's a 3-foot setback or from the left side so that they can walk up the roof. And there's an 18-inch setback from the ridge, which is fine because the total percentage is 17% of the roof is covered in solar panels. You don't need to know exactly where those panels, you'll see exactly where they're installed. You don't need to know that before you get there. It doesn't change anything. If I told you the panels are going to be, centered on the roof and somebody didn't notice a plumbing pipe and we had to move a few things around, it doesn't change anything so long as the code requirements are met, which is to say that the setbacks are met. So the next question that came up in the chat is, does SolarAPP include batteries? And at this point, we can tell you that for the most part, it does. We're still piloting SolarAPP plus energy storage systems. There's a lot of places that are using it in that pilot phase. We expect it to roll out to everybody shortly. So yes, we're already actively doing audits on PV plus ESS SolarAPP permits. I'm going to keep going here. If you, again, more questions, just please throw them into the chat for us. As you can see here, we're just asking more questions from the contractor. Output of your alternating current conductions. Are you performing a main panel upgrade? Now, again, you're allowed a main panel upgrade. You're not allowed a service upgrade. All right, so what's the service rated for? How many bus bars? What is the bus bar? Do you have the, bus bar number 1 is typically the main service panel. Bus bar number 2 is very often the PV combiner panel. So you can also have a sub panel that might be involved in the installation. That would be bus bar number 3. And again, if we answer any of these questions in a way we shouldn't, or if more information is needed, as you see, I just changed my input from no to yes. Now it's asking me additional questions. So the software is actively responding to the inputs that are put in by the contractor. Hong is asking, for example, how can we verify if the azimuth between what's in the SolarAPP versus what's being installed? Again, the SolarAPP is going to tell us that we're installing 20 panels made by Hanwha, 400 watts each panel, and we have microinverters on each one. That's in your paperwork. That's part of your long form that's generated through the SolarAPP process. Once you have that, you can go to the site and say, okay, they installed 20 panels. They're all made by Hanwha. They're connected through microinverters. And again, there's a PV combiner panel. The overcurrent protective device going into the main panel is 40 amps or less if it's a 200 amp panel, things of that nature. This is all on paper. It just doesn't require the need for a plan set, a picture, if you will. Last page, I believe, here is we're going to go through and make sure that we have workers' comp. And if you have employees, most states require you to have workers' comp. Look, I'm not agreeing to these terms and conditions. Please preview my project. I'm stopped. I can't go any further. Until I check this box, SolarAPP will not allow me to preview the project. And as I showed you, once everything goes through and SolarAPP believes us on everything, the approval documents are set up and you're given a job-specific set of plans here for each one of your permits that's issued. All right, how many staff for each jurisdiction need to have a SolarAPP login? I don't know. I have no idea how many people need a SolarAPP login. But we will write that one down and absolutely get an answer for you. So for those of you who may be wondering how this actually works, my understanding is if you have permitting software, you're basically creating a new permit type. And because we've gone through the onboarding and pilot process, you're basically saying, if it's a SolarAPP project, we agree we'll issue the permit. So they go in, they say it's a SolarAPP project. Okay, you say upload your SolarAPP paperwork. They do so, they pay your fees, the permit is instantly issued, and everything goes there. How does SolarAPP handle systems of power control systems? It does ask about power control systems if that's one of the protection methodologies that you're using. Typically with the ESS systems is where I've seen these, and it's in the software. Is it a perfect system? No, it's not, but it is in the software. Some of this does come down to your field inspectors knowing what to look for and doing the right inspection. We can only automate so much of this without making it onerous. You don't want your contractor having to answer 850 questions over the course of 4 days in order to get his permit issued. That doesn't help our situation or the case. The idea is to try and make this fast track, so we go from there.
So Michael, there's another question here that I don't quite understand, but somebody's saying the applicant still needs to come to the jurisdiction to obtain the city's permit and comply with the business license requirements. The permit itself is actually issued online. So maybe I'm not understanding the question.
The permit may be issued online. Wherever possible, we issue the permit online. Some jurisdictions don't have a way to issue a permit online. So what ends up happening is, again, they're not able to go into the system and even request a SolarAPP application if they haven't met your licensing requirements. So, trade license and business license would all be before they started the process. So that's not an issue. We already know that they're okay to work in your jurisdiction. All of that's been checked on it's part of the database of contractors that are permitted to use your system. So licensing's not an issue. Once we put them in the system and say, yes, they have a valid trade license, they have a valid business license, they get to use SolarAPP. The permit itself, depending on what software you have, if any, can be issued online. Again, you're pre-agreeing. You've already agreed that SolarAPP works, that it requires no further effort on your part, no input on your part as a jurisdiction. So you just create the permit type called SolarAPP. Again, they go to SolarAPP, they pay us our fee of $25. Then this list, the inspection checklist, this long form is generated as a PDF. They get redirected over to your city's website. They will upload the PDF. pay whatever fees you need. And then if your permitting software has the ability, that software will then instantly issue the permit to them. So hopefully that answers your questions. I did make one mistake in the presentation. SolarAPP allows 2 revisions, not 3. So I wanted to clarify that. You can put in the initial application and you're allowed 2 revisions without paying an additional fee to SolarAPP. Again, if your jurisdiction requires an additional fee for each revision, we can set that up with you so that all of the revisions, you're getting your proper fees paid. The city collects their permit fees either directly through your permitting software, or we set you up with a Stripe account. Stripe is the contractor that's been selected by the federal government for this project. This was developed by the federal government. NREL is a federal government entity. So we've set you up with a Stripe account, and Stripe sends you your money.
Did you see the question about SolarAPP checking for 705.12 requirements if the contractor
I didn't see that.
and solar inverter to a critical panel instead of connecting to either a gateway or a main service panel?
Well, again, you can't have a critical panel in a 1 or 2 family dwelling.
So that would be a more complicated project and that would require manual plan review.
That's absolutely going to go over the counter through manual plan review. Yeah. Yep. 705.12 is absolutely looked for. But you know, our connections are going to be through a sub panel, through a breaker sandwich, you know, tying into a feeder or something like that, backfeeding through the main panel, or a line side connection. Again, these are the most common. I think SolarAPP currently has in excess of 70 different connection schemes that it will allow. So whatever's in the NEC by way of allowing to make these connections, SolarAPP has it in there.
Okay. I think we're almost there, right?
I'm done with my end of it. The tech demo's finished, so
Okay.
I'm just going to hang around here and see if anybody else has any more questions.
One more question. Do you have any schemes of connections?
Write that one down. I don't think we have a way to set up to send that out. I think it's proprietary.
Okay. On the list. I have to say, LA Basin chapter, you are generating the best questions I've seen in a while. So kudos to you.
I agree 100%. This has been very, very good, very interactive, and I appreciate it. When I see this many questions, people are paying attention, and that matters to me. So thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate the invitation to provide this presentation to you today. I did put my email address in the chat earlier. I'm going to do it again right now so that everybody has it. When you see
Michael, hang on. We got a couple more questions coming in here.
Go for it.
Does the system notify the jurisdiction when a request is submitted? We have a lot of properties with pending violations that would require abatement prior to a final inspection.
Yes, whenever a SolarAPP permit is issued, the paperwork is sent to the jurisdiction and to the applicant.
Okay. And well, I think they're probably suggesting, do they know if a request is submitted before the permit is issued? And not really, right? It's just, you know, if the contractor puts in the project and the project adheres to all of the proper qualifications that's been set up for the jurisdiction, the permit would be issued.
I believe the permit would be issued, but again, the jurisdiction will be notified. So
Yes.
if there was a problem with
Once
that
it happens,
property,
right. So
you could reach out.
Take action.
The next question is 20-page inspection checklist. It is not a 20-page inspection checklist. Hopefully everybody sees the inspection checklist that I'm sharing the screen here. The actual inspection checklist, folks, is about 2.5 pages. After that, it's the long form. So
Right.
the inspection,
Think about the inspection checklist, you know, sort of a distillation or, you know, compilation of all those algorithms, all that information in the back that Michael's gone through.
That's correct. It is literally 2.5 pages of check boxes. It can be just a little bit longer than this, depending on the complication of the process and if there's an energy storage system as well. But this is not a 20-page inspection checklist. This is a 22-page long form. So that means that it's the inspection checklist, the fire bulletin, all of the contractor's inputs, the workers' compensation statement, and I will take you to the last page, just so everybody knows. I reviewed with you earlier the inspection checklist. Well, that's provided again for you again as a convenience at the end of this long form. So you actually have the whole eligibility checklist available to you. So when you walk out there and this is a mansion and it has a 600 amp service and they lied about it, you can pull right to the last page and say, look, it's right here. You can't go more than 400 amp service. Well, no, write your violation and walk away. The permit's void. They have to come to the counter and do the process the right way. We're providing a service, a benefit to the industry. Please don't abuse it because we will take away your privilege. There's a question here. Is the recording going to be sent out? I'm going to shoot that one to Cynthia.
Yeah, we'll have the recording. We can post it on our webpage. And if you need a direct link, you can also email the secretary and give him your email address. Unfortunately, this was a quick Zoom link, so we don't have everybody's email. So just shoot it to him, secretary@ICC-LABC.org.
And Michael, I don't know if you have handy the URL for the example inspection checklist. If you do, could you put it in the chat? If not, we'll make that available afterwards.
I don't think I have that one, but
I
hold
just
on.
started to look for it and I can't put my fingers on it. I need a few more
I can't put my finger on this. It's not in my, I have a
we'll send it
document
to you.
open with all my handy links and that's not one of them.
Yeah, we will send that to you.
Okay, and again, just as a reminder, the checklist is not a quote unquote generic checklist. The checklist is job specific.
Right.
So I want to make sure that's clear to everybody. You're not getting a generic checklist that sort of kind of works on most of the jobs that we've seen. You're getting a checklist that is specific to that site.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why, you know, when you say share the checklist with you, it's not going to be of much use to you because the parameters of your next job may be very different from the parameters that I show you in any given checklist that I might send over to you. So please be aware of that.
I think people mean as an example, just to have an example of what we're looking. Yeah. Any other questions?
Well, it says if the system is installed in a non-permitted structure, we just ask for it to be moved during the field inspection. You could do that. I know there are some jurisdictions out there that would like to have perhaps some harsher reactions to that situation, but you do you.
Exactly.
Okay, folks, I did put my email address in the chat. Please make note, there is no E in my first name. That's not a typo. My first name is spelled without an E. So don't make that mistake or else you will not be able to email me. Other than that, again, thank you so much, Cynthia and your leadership team. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. Thank you, Laura, for joining us today.